Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. The Super Bowl is in the books. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their Super Bowl Sunday, whether your team won or lost. Can't really do much about that, but hopefully you had a good time. However you watch a game with friends on your own, maybe had some good food or drink. Hopefully you had a great time with that. But hey, this is going to be our last one of these shows for a while. So let me just go through a couple quick business points, and then we'll get right to the Super Bowl. So again, after today's show, I'm going to take a break and come back the first week in March. Now, we're not going to be, if you're watching on YouTube right now, RotoWire YouTube, that's going to be baseball only for RotoWire going forward. So when the shows come back in March, you're going to want to catch me on the RotoWire Twitter, my Twitter. And then what'll end up happening is after that, once we get through the switch over, we will have a RotoWire football only channel that'll probably come out somewhere around the NFL draft. And so at that point, you'll be, check my Twitter at Jim Coventry and involved for that. Also, Anthony, who just jumped in, and I are going to be doing Monday RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. They again will be on RotoWire Twitter. Again, we won't have this channel on YouTube right now, but you'll be able to download those on your podcast platform of choice. And also, you want a free trial at RotoWire. We have every sport covered for you. Best baseball coverage on the planet. RotoWire.com/Jim. No credit card needed. 2 days. Anthony, so good morning. Welcome.
What's going on, guys? How are you?
Super Bowl's in the books. So I guess we'll just chop right at it here. So look, dude, what a game. Both teams in their own ways were deserving champions. NFC championship for the Niners, they deserved it. The Chiefs, world champions, they deserve it. One team walks away with the trophy. I know, Anthony, when I was doing my preview, I picked the 49ers, but I told everybody, don't listen to me. I go, they have Patrick Mahomes. And if you're going to bet on Patrick Mahomes, you go and bet on Patrick Mahomes. I go, I'll bet the under on this game. But like I said, very hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I've said this before. I live in Chicago. I was a Bulls season ticket holder, was at every home playoff game Michael Jordan ever played. And I saw him beat teams he had no business beating time in, time out. Patrick Mahomes has those traits. What were your thoughts on that whole scenario?
I was in on Mahomes, and I can't bet against the guy. He keeps proving everybody wrong. But this was the year. If you look, this was the worst offense he's ever had. Best defense, which kind of flew under the radar. But this was the year to beat Mahomes with all the adversity that they had to play a game in Germany. They had a lot of time without any time off. They didn't have that normal playoff bye that we've seen them having. They were underdogs throughout the playoffs, on the road throughout the playoffs. This was the year to kind of put a kink in the armor of the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty, and they pulled it out.
And that was the incredible thing, right? It was really not their optimal scenario, and yet they came out victorious. And I guess, I was going to wait toward the end, but let's say this now, because I know you may have to cut a little early today. So long term, obviously, the bill is still going to come due on L'Jarius Sneed, on Chris Jones, as to whether they could keep them. They've done a great job of drafting and bringing people in. Spagnuolo is a genius. Offensively, again, with Mahomes, the contract's team friendly, but how much can they ultimately afford? And so we're going to keep seeing, I think, a lot of shifting pieces around him. But again, like Michael Jordan, you've got Mahomes there, and he's 28 now. And he is right there in the discussion with how many Super Bowl trophies, Super Bowl MVPs, and he could be playing another 10 plus years. And if he goes into that 40 range, we could see 12 or 13 more years. So before we get to the game, any final words on that?
I think it's all going to depend on, because I think Andy Reid plays so much into this, where he talk about the marriage or the union of Belichick and Brady. How much does Andy Reid play into the success of Patrick Mahomes? So I think this can keep going as long as Andy Reid keeps going.
Yes, and who knows how long that goes. It could go for quite a while, but right now, let's get to the game. So to start the game, the first half was a disappointment for the Chiefs. Now, remember, in the playoffs, they have been doing reasonably well in the first half and throughout the season. First halves were really good. But their first two drives, they ran 7 plays. They had a 3 and out, and then their second drive, they did get a first down on the first play, and then 3 and out there. 2 punts. So they tried those quick screens, one to Kelsey, one to Rashee Rice. 49ers all over him. The total of those two screens was 1 yard. There were times when, as I was hoping, Fred Warner was on Kelsey. Otherwise, they had good coverage on him, made it difficult to give easy sight lines from Mahomes in the first half only, we're talking about, and then pass protection. Anytime there was an obvious passing down in the first half, Chase Young was taking Donovan Smith's lunch money. He was in there, and then Nick Bosa was a beast, getting pressure for 4 quarters. And they get a sack on Mahomes, or 2 sacks, and then an intentional grounding. And the 49ers defense really looked at this point like they may have had an answer. How did you feel early in the game, those first couple of drives?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. The Chiefs have been a first half team. My biggest worry was, how do they perform in the second half if this becomes a shootout? Because we've seen the 49ers overcome that, but that wasn't the case. The Kansas City Chiefs could not get anything going. And I think the saving grace was the fact that neither could San Francisco. Their drives were stalling out as well. I also feel like both sides, but more so the Chiefs. I know McKinnon played a nice role yesterday, made a couple key plays, but I also think that the Kansas City offense did play better when Pacheco was the featured back. So
that makes sense.
McKinnon coming back, and we saw a little mix of CEH in there. I think it was too much change because through these playoffs, when it comes to carries, Pacheco had 2 games with 24, and then the one with 15.
Yes. It was the 3rd game where Pacheco didn't sniff 4 yards to carry out of 4 in the playoffs. He had the one game against Buffalo where he was over it. He didn't sniff 4 yards to carry. Yeah. As I projected in this game, I said he'd have a couple longer runs. He'd have a couple chunk runs, but he's not a sustainer. And that's kind of what happened here as well. He was not a sustainer. And let's navigate through a little bit. I'm going to circle, kind of go wild back and forth, but we're going to get back to that point. So that was where we started with the Chiefs. Now let's talk about the 49ers first couple drives and what we saw. So first of all, that first drive, 49ers looked sharp. It wasn't many carries, but McCaffrey was gashing them. They mixed in that Kyle Juszczyk play, 18-yard pass, completely caught the Chiefs off guard. They get the ball right in the field goal range. McCaffrey fumbles. And at that point, of course you're thinking, that's probably going to come back and haunt them. In the short term, it doesn't, but realistically, that's an issue. Let me go one more point, and then I'll have you jump in. But then after that drive, so they move right down field goal range, fumble, Chiefs ball. The rest of the half, the Chiefs made instant adjustments. They decided to go with a heavy blitz package, but it was blitzing not necessarily to rush the quarterback. It was a run blitz. They were trying to gum up running lanes as much as they could, and they were playing heavy man coverage. It appeared to me at that point, they said, you know what? If you're going to beat us, Brock Purdy, you're not going to have any of these nice little zone windows to throw in. We are going to get pressure because when that run blitz comes, if they're not running or you're going empty, it's going to bring pressure on you. We are going to force your hand. What were your thoughts through that first fumble drive and then the adjustments the Chiefs made quickly?
My initial reaction to that fumble, because at that point, the 49ers looked like, hey, they're going to do what the hell they want to do. And then that fumble happened, and immediately my, reactionary mind was, all right, like this is that type of momentum that you can't give up in the Super Bowl. And then Kansas City, we know, stalls out. They couldn't capitalize. We saw a lot more 49ers offense when it comes to moving the football, obviously, in the first half than we did the Kansas City Chiefs. And that made me worry as somebody backing Kansas City from a betting point of view. I was very much worried that eventually this 49ers offense is going to score the football. And I was worried about where's the answer.
Right. And where was the answer? That's what we were going to be thinking about. Those who are dumping comments, we are definitely going to get your comments at the end. Anthony may not be able to hang out till then, but we'll definitely get your comments, so we won't forget you. Hang with us. So, all right. So now let's go back to the Chiefs. We'll kind of go back and forth here. We talked earlier about that Chiefs' first couple drives that were problematic. Well, now the Chiefs did have some chance to score. The big chance, early second quarter. You get, first of all, Rashee Rice. That was a very weird fumble. It looked like it was a forward lateral, and like he was trying to pitch it forward to Justin Watson. It was declared a fumble. But I thought if they called a review on that, but I don't know if they could have called a penalty on that because it should have been a penalty. It should have been a 10-yard loss. But they get the ball, and the next play, Mahomes, a 52-yard dime to Mecole Hardman, puts him on the 9, and then the next play, Isaiah Pacheco fumbles the ball away. I mean, it wasn't optimal to have a critical turnover, but it's funny. When the 49ers had the McCaffrey fumble, I'm thinking that's going to come back and haunt them. Even though the Chiefs were, playing from behind a bit, I still felt, not good. But if a team can overcome an error, it's probably them. What were your thoughts after the big play to Hardman and then the fumble by Pacheco?
The big play to Hardman sparks the offense, puts Kansas City in scoring position. They can get a lead in this game. Then when the fumble happens, a little bit of a different thought process compared to when McCaffrey fumbled, because, McCaffrey fumbled, 49ers will bounce back, where if you're the Chiefs, you can't give up that scoring position. You can't give up those points. And I thought that was going to be very difficult for Kansas City to come back from, because they haven't moved the football outside of really that one monster play to Hardman.
And that was it. And what a monster play it was. But again, the fumble and 49ers bail out. So we talked earlier, now we'll bounce back to the 49ers, how there was a lot of run blitz, but it also served as a pass blitz. And the 49ers started to abandon the run. They played right into what the Chiefs wanted. The Chiefs effectively took that massive workload McCaffrey's going to get. And there was a report that Shanahan was getting 30 carries in this game. So when we did that pregame analysis, I was on that one, that was their plan. It didn't work. But here's what happened. In the first half, the 49ers' great trio of Kittle, Samuel, Ayuk, 42 receiving yards. But what was the turnaround? The turnaround was the 49ers are resourceful because the advantageous matchups, Ray McLeod, Chris Conley, Jawan Jennings, they had been catching passes. But again, it's exactly what the Chiefs wanted. Beat us with these ancillary guys, but we are going to do everything we can to limit your stars. What were your thoughts when you saw the Ray McLeod catching a 19-yard pass, Conley moving the chains on third down? What were your thoughts when they were having the success?
It was impressive to see that from Brock Purdy, because, they're not the first, second, or third reads. And he was resourceful enough to go find these other guys open, and he was making good throws. On the other side, they're also not the explosive players that George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Ayuk is. So, they're giving up the plays, but like what you said, they're doing exactly what Spags wants them to do.
And that's not where you want to be. When you're playing into what a team wants you to do, you're trying to beat them left-handed, and that is always a problem. So the game is still...
remind you of Belichick, the old Belichick?
Yes.
Hey, we're going to dictate what you do.
And I didn't think that was possible. We've got McCaffrey. We've got Kittle, Ayuk, Samuel. At some point, I thought they had too many pieces that you can't take that all away. But Spagnuolo was able to effectively neuter much of the offense. So the game is still 3-0, Anthony. We're midway into the second quarter, and the 49ers, they get that personal foul that helps them extend a drive, really helped them a lot, and then the trick play. Purdy throws the backwards lateral to Jawan Jennings, and the play takes forever to develop. And then he throws a lollipop across the field. And I saw Colton McKivitz just holding a block forever. I mean, I don't mean holding. I mean, holding it perfectly a block. And it allowed McCaffrey just to kind of came up to the ball, and then he just darts in the end zone. Now, I know there was another blocker downfield that, the referees probably didn't see it because the play was such a weird developing play. They probably didn't recognize it was there. So I get the no call, but the play by Jennings and the touchdown by McCaffrey, the 49ers have a double-digit lead. There's 4 minutes left in the half. Where were you at that point?
That play sequence was wild because that ball hung up there a long time, and it easily could have gone the other way. That almost reminded me of, if the 49ers win that game, we're having a conversation of that's like the San Francisco special. Right?
Yes.
That's where where my mind went there. It was just one of those, you got Shanahan and Reed, two of the most creative offensive play callers, and he's pulling the rabbit out of his hat right here. And again, even those plays, they spark the offense. They can deflate a defense. And I thought, okay, here we go. 49ers are going to start turning it on. And that was a terrific play by McCaffrey. The way he runs the football, the power, the speed, he really is one of the most exciting players to watch and well deserving of the offensive player of the year. And if you had McCaffrey, there's so many different betting markets. I had McCaffrey to score in the first half, and I split. They had the split markets where McCaffrey or Kittle will score the first touchdown. The odds aren't as great, but those were two nice bets that I'm sure a lot of people had.
Yes. So 4:23 left in the half. Kansas City gets the ball, and they finally get Rashee Rice involved. They get him a couple plays, and now they're moving the ball. Big play, a third down, and Nick Bosa again. Just constant pressure on Mahomes. 21-yard pass to Justin Watson, but it was just, again, otherwise it was Rashee Rice. It was his drive. They weren't like massive plays, but they were moving the chains. They get this thing down deep into the red zone, and they have to come away with a field goal, 28-yard chip shot. It's almost halftime. It's 10-3. The fact they got the field goal on the board, fans of theirs would have liked the touchdown. Where were you at when it was 10-3 going into the halftime?
The fact that the Kansas City Chiefs were able to put some points on the board. If you're a Chiefs fan or you're backing the Chiefs, that's good, because you remember Kansas City was also getting the ball coming out of the second half. So I initially thought the other way around, where we know Shanahan likes getting that ball, but I believe Kansas City won the toss and decided to kick. But, I think Reed's the same way. Give me the ball coming out of the half. So it's almost like using Shanahan's strategy against him. But I had a lot of confidence, even though the 49ers had a one-possession lead. I had a lot more confidence than I would if it was a shutout. Because I don't think any Super Bowl team has won getting shut out in the first half.
Correct. So one more point before I go to the second half. The Dre Greenlaw injury. What a weird injury. Wow. It was like he was going on the field. Then it's like, oh, I need to wait. Tears his Achilles. And I started to think, and we're going to circle back to this in a bit, but I began to think this could be a halftime adjustment that could really go wrong for the 49ers, because that defense, as much as they have great players on all levels, that linebacking duo of Warner and Greenlaw allow everybody in that defense a ton of flexibility. So I was very concerned. We'll circle back to that, but let's just get to the second half. So now, like you said, the Chiefs wanted the ball. They had the ball. They scored going into the locker room, 10-3. They have their chance to tie the game. The first play that Eric pitched to Pacheco loses 12 yards. 2 plays later, Mahomes under a little pressure. Warner had a good bump on Kelsey, interception. So now 49ers had the ball near midfield. At that particular moment, where was your mind at?
I think I started getting a little bit worried at this point, because, again, the plan was, okay, you score going into the half, you score coming out, brand new ball game, and then the Chiefs stall again. And scaling back to the way the 49ers have played football in the playoffs, they are a second half team. I think the biggest issue, that, especially for most of this game, for either side, there were plenty of opportunities where one side could bury the other, and nobody really took the opportunity, and you let Mahomes hang around too long.
That is well stated. They let him hang around. So that drive, the 49ers get the ball, they don't even move the chains. And they come out again doing what Spags dictated to do. I think they came out an empty on one of the early downs, and they were all of a sudden in 3rd and long, where they've been at in much of the game. Can't move the chains. And so anyway, the next 4 drives result in punts. 3 49ers drives. I know the Chiefs had to punt one away, and there's a bunch of 3 and outs. So now we're moving through this, and I'm going to give the 49ers some credit here. The 49ers, like we said, the Chiefs took what they wanted to do away. Up to this point in the game, Kelsey will get into this in a moment. Up to this point in the game, the 49ers limited Pacheco, limited Rashee Rice, and had really limited Kelsey, who had 1 yard at the half. Now, after all those punts, now the game changed. It was clear that whatever adjustments the Chiefs made, they didn't really install them until mid to late third quarter. Now they started getting more creative with how they use Travis Kelce, moved him around a little more. They also had times where they were able to get him on Demetrius Flanagan Foles. Remember the Dre Greenlaw replacement? They were able to get other players matched up on him, and they were making him the mark, and they were taking advantage of that. And Mahomes, under all this pressure, didn't matter because he kept pulling plays out. So ultimately, though, at this point, we're getting near the end of the third quarter. The Chiefs kick their field goal. It's 10-6. You start to see signs of life. Did you sense the momentum shift when Kelce started getting heavily involved and they cut it to 4?
I did. You go back to the first half, and I know everybody's talking about it. Kelce bumping Andy Reid, and this is an emotional game. Players get heated, coaches get heated. That's not abnormal, and I think it's just being magnified because of this Travis Kelce. But he wanted the football. He didn't want to come off the field, and they were taking him off the field, it seemed like, on some running downs and even some crucial passing downs. And Kelce got you here, right? Like, playoff Kelce's a real thing. He got you here, and he was really, I don't know if it was coverage. I don't know what it was. He wasn't really involved. Maybe Andy Reid was trying to get too cute. But once Kelce and Mahomes started taking over in the second half, towards the end of the third, early fourth quarter, it was a whole new ball game and a whole new Kansas City offense.
So at 10-6, so Anthony, I told you my big bet on the game was under 47.5. That half's important because the overtime got it within a half a point of that. But that said, my other bet late in the week, I did go with the 49ers -2. When it was 10-6, I went right to both sports books. I went to Bet Caesars and I went to DraftKings, and I said, momentum shifted. 49ers are winning. I am cashing out. So I went to both sites, made a very tiny profit, didn't lose money. I knew at that point, I said, the 49ers could win this game, but the probability right now is they're probably not. So I cashed those bets out, and that my lesson to everybody is, and I did this also in the 49ers-Lions game, when the 49ers had the 10-point lead late, and I was -7, I cashed that one out, and I made a good profit on that, not a great profit, and then they ended up not covering. So be very cognizant of the in-game betting. But with that momentum, and I cashed that bet. Any comments about the in-game betting and changing up like that?
Live betting is fun. It could also be profitable, and it could also save you from losing money. Like what you're doing is very smart. I wish I made those moves, because usually I want to go for it all. So I don't cash out often, even though it is the right thing to do. I had Kansas City, the money line going into the game, and coming out of the third quarter, I grabbed Kansas City's money line again. This time, I think plus 210 over at DraftKings. And I don't know. I call it stupidity, call it gut, but I just, it just seemed like the 49ers had so many opportunities to take control of the game, and they didn't. And again, it just reminds me of the old Brady years. It's like Rocky. Let the guy hang around till round 12. He's going to knock you out.
So now it's late third quarter, and Rocky with the knockout. I like that. And so it's 10-6. Kansas City gets one more third quarter drive. They're unable to get a first down, and despite having a second down and 2, so they don't move the chains. And so now they're still trailing by the 10-6 game. And it's clear, like I said earlier, Pacheco was not consistently moving the chains. He'd have a couple chunk runs, but it was not a consistent run game. The 49ers held up extremely well. I pointed out before this game, the style of run, he's mostly a downhill runner. Occasionally they ran outside and worked. I didn't think that the game that Pacheco played was going to consistently work against the 49ers defense, and it didn't. But that said, I mentioned earlier, Kelce was involved. We got a bunch of him. We got to catch a Justin Watson. They get it inside the 10, and here we go. Again, they're in that idea where they're moving the ball and doing well. So anyway, with the game close, 49ers just keep punting this thing away. And we see that punt error. The punt that went up to the 49ers, it hits the blocker in the leg. Ray McCloud tries to dash after it. He can't. And it took the Chiefs one play to hit Marquez Valdes-Scantling for a 16-yard touchdown. And all of a sudden, the Niners trailed for the first time. The Chiefs had a 13-10 lead. What were your thoughts there?
That was that moment. We had those 2 fumbles early in the first half, and this was that type of a play. at this point of the game, and we started to seeing the shift in the Kansas City offense, at that point, I had a really strong feeling and confident feeling that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to pull it out. But Jim, I do got to run to my son's at the school, but I didn't want to miss this. I wanted to give you a little something. We waited all year to get here, but next time you see us together, we're going to be on the RotoWire NFL podcast.
March 4th. All right, Anthony, good luck with everything, and I'm going to check you out, and I'll keep going. Take care, man.
Right, talk to you later. See you later, guys.
All right, so as I was saying, now fourth quarter begins. The Niners are driving the ball. So they're down 13-10, but they look like they have some signs of life here, right? And they get down to the Chiefs like they're 15, 4th and 3. Now, here's the question. Do you take the field goal and do you tie this thing up, or do you go for it? And I was surprised. Kyle Shanahan, he goes for it. I mean, they line him up, and the announcers are saying, well, they're probably going to let the play clock run down, see if they get a penalty and maybe move the chains that way. And they snapped it quickly. And so a quick out to George Kittle is really 2 catches for 4 yards, but that catch he made moves the chains and it gets in there. And then on the next play, the Chiefs go zero coverage, all out blitz, and Jawan Jennings to the rescue again. Catches that slant, shakes off a tackle, gets in the end zone. At this point, so the 49ers, they blow the extra point. This is going to be huge. Jake Moody kicks it low. Chris Jones gets an edge in on the block, blocks this thing, and I keep thinking here, wow, now the Niners are just up 3. A 4 and a 3 are a massive, massive difference in a close game like this, and that's going to be huge. But I also thought at this point, if the 49ers pull this game out and win, is Jawan Jennings really going to be the MVP? He threw the touchdown to McCaffrey. He caught their other touchdown, and it will mention later, he had another long catch, like a 22-yard catch in this game. I think that had they pulled out or held on to that game, he's probably the Super Bowl MVP. Wow. And talk about incredible. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he wasn't, but I don't know how you wouldn't make him. If, again, that touchdown pass to McCaffrey is a big deal too. But crazy enough, after that extra point misses, we have a 3-point game. So the next time the 49ers are going to get the ball, there's about 6 minutes left. And the game at that point, the Chiefs had marched out again and got another field goal. So we're 16 apiece, right? And the offense is now clicking. Again, Jennings catches the longer pass, and they're moving the ball. Now they have this chance. The 49ers have a chance to win the game here because not only are they moving the ball, but they're draining the clock. They get this thing down to 2 minutes. They're literally at the point where if they get a first down, they delete or eliminate the Chiefs timeouts. If they get a second first down, they could get themselves in field goal range and have a field goal attempt with no time left and win the game. This is what they did theoretically or close against the Lions. They bled the clock. They bled it down, to the point where they were up 10 and the Lions had enough time for a quick touchdown, but they bled so much clock that it didn't leave them enough margin for error to get to 2 scores. They had the chance, the 49ers did, to have done that. And they had a third down pass to Kittle. It only got them 1 yard. So they have a third, they have the fourth down and like 4. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, you could go for the field goal here, but you're going to give Mahomes a minute 53 and 2 timeouts. And I'm thinking to myself, that's bad business. Yeah, I get it. You love your defense, but do you really want to give the ball to Mahomes with a minute 53 and 2 timeouts, only up by 3? Because getting a field goal, that's a walk in the park. And the chance of getting a touchdown, that's definitely on the table. So the 49ers, yes, they kicked the long field goal, convert it. I almost think that, again, there's no wrong decision here. They got the points. They got the lead. Maybe their defense comes through. But, man, if you go for it and convert, you really, really tighten this thing up, and you have that chance, like I said, to drain the clock and win. And I think sometimes you play to win it, and that would have been playing to win it. And if they miss, maybe their defense still holds because their defense would have had to have held anyway. So all that said, I think they missed an opportunity. I really think the 49ers should have gone on that fourth down. And like I said, take a timeout, burn a timeout, go to your bag of tricks and cook up a play. And I know they're going to come zero blitz, but you got to come up with something here. And they didn't. So again, Chiefs get the ball, minute 53 and 2 timeouts. And again, bunch of Kelsey, open, Fred Warner. He shook Warner on a nice legal, L-E-G-L, not an illegal, legal pick play. Got him open very quickly. Great. McKinnon moves the chains. They're moving the ball, but they mismanaged the clock a bit. The Chiefs could have had this thing where they had enough time to work for the touchdown and the win in regulation, but they burned a little too much time. So they throw that touchdown attempt to Kelsey in the end zone, falls incomplete, 6 seconds left. They go to Harrison Butker, chip shot. This thing goes to overtime. So that said, we are in overtime. 49ers kneel down with their one play they had left, which was smart, and that was it. So we get to overtime. And the announcers smartly remind the audience about the new overtime rules. Apparently, the 49ers players didn't know them. I don't know that it changes patently how they would approach the game. But again, it's a coaching detail that, that's something that should be taught. It wasn't not the end of the world, but the new overtime rules were that if somebody scores a touchdown, the other team gets a chance to score. Now, I'm nervous here because I'm betting the under on this game like a good percentage of people. And this game was a clear under the whole way. But if both teams scored a touchdown, this game goes over. And it's like, seriously? So the new overtime rules are going to do that. And that's something in betting future Super Bowls. I mean, this is only the second game ever in the Super Bowl to go to overtime, but it's definitely something to consider because that's a big deal if you're betting an under in a Super Bowl and it somehow gets to overtime because you could see 14 points and then more because there could be somebody's going to win the game. So you could have 17 points, 20 points. I mean, 17 or 23. You could have 17 or 23 points in an overtime. So that's something to really consider there. So good there, right? So, all right. And again, comments I'm going to get to everybody. Scott, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to get to you in a bit. So definitely hang with me a little bit longer. So with the new rules, though, we kind of get this. And again, if you're betting this thing, if you have the over, you got a shot too. So the 49ers, though, they come out in overtime and they make the same mistake they made in the second half. They come out empty. They come out looking to throw. And they know what they're going to get. Heavy man, heavy blitz, and they're going to be in trouble. And they're ready to go 3 and out. They got bailed out on a defensive holding call. And at that point, I'm thinking to myself, Shanahan just got a reprieve here. Is he going to fix this? Is he going to say, you know what, let's run the ball? Surprisingly, he did. All of a sudden, they went back to McCaffrey. Chunk runs, moving it. They did get to a third down, though. And they had after a while, McCaffrey had like an 8-yard run. Then he was stuffed. They had a 3rd and short. And honestly, at this point, they're 3rd and short, like 3rd and 3, maybe. I'm saying, look, let's run McCaffrey on 3rd down. And if he doesn't make it, let's run him on 4th down. Again, you're playing this game to get 7 points on the board here because the Chiefs are getting the ball regardless of what you do. Instead, they go pass. Purdy under pressure. Forced to throw the ball away. Moody hits a short field goal. Now Mahomes has the ball with a chance to win or tie and send it further, right? But again, I really think that was not the right call by Shanahan. They had their opportunity to let McCaffrey win, give him a 7-point lead. Because again, it could have still been tied, but to give him the 7 instead of a 3. So that said, the Chiefs get the ball. Mahomes just puts it on his back. Mahomes runs when he needs. Right, they had a 3rd down. I'm thinking to myself, they go bootleg here. Yep, they go empty. They go bootleg. Get Kelsey involved. Everybody stepped up for the Chiefs in this one. We'll talk about the individual players in a moment. Valdez-Scantling almost hurt them. Remember, he had that 7-yard catch. And then he got spun and he went backwards and he started to re-engage his run. So that play ends up going from a 7-yard gain to a 4-yard loss or 2nd and 14. They go back to him. He gets like an 8-yard gain and they move the chains. I'll get to the touchdown. The touchdown by Mecole Hardman is a thing of beauty. They lined up the Chiefs. 4 eligible receivers bunched to the line on the right. 4 of them. And then they sent Hardman in motion to the left, like he was going to go away from the 4 and make it a 3-man sack. And then right at the snap, they turned him around and the whole side was open because how many men are going to cover in that short formation? And the motion definitely caught them off. Thing of beauty. Beautiful play. Dagger. Hardman catches it. Newest dynasty, if you weren't already. Find a way to win. Mahomes, easy MVP, goes over 300 yards. 49ers, probably left asking a lot of questions. I do want to wrap up some of the individual players. Let's take some comments here. Sauger thought it was, very exciting game. Yes, if you're watching a Super Bowl, this is how you want them. Doesn't matter about the sloppiness. It all is part of it. It was a great game. It was competitive the whole way. And then Scott asked about Kyle Shannon's coaching legacy. I mean, it's a knock on him. It is a knock. He lost as an offensive coordinator the 28-3 game. You know, he lost the one in Super Bowl 54 where they were up 10 points in the end of the third quarter. And they lost by 11. Yeah, there's going to be a lot on Shanahan here. Shanahan is a genius. There's no doubt about it. But my thoughts right now are sometimes when he could be outcoached, he can be outcoached. He doesn't seem to have maybe the second half adjustments he needs. Maybe when a team makes an adjustment to him, circling back on that. And I think that part of his game is lacking. There's some clock management issues, not so much in this game. But again, some of those plays late, I mean, they're 50-50 calls, but they had chances to play for the win, and they didn't. They kind of played scared a bit. And again, that last drive, they could have just gone McCaffrey on 2 runs. And if he doesn't get it, he doesn't get it. But I mean, Purdy was going to be under a lot of pressure, and we knew that. And I remember the Trent McDuffie played. I should point this out on that one blitz where the corner blitz, the slot corner blitz is something that Spags used a lot this year. And McDuffie, tips the pass, and that was huge for them. And then Powerlift USA points out when Wilkes started blitzing, you knew they lost. Kansas City receivers starting to fail Mahomes, and they let them off the hook with the useless blitz. Yeah, I can't hard argue that. And then Scott, oh, good. You had a huge night betting wise. Hit a parlay for 1K because I'm glad you liked the notes on that. The notes are always tough. I try to give the pro and the con freaks, let everybody make their own decisions. Sounds like you made some great decisions there. My best bet on the night was always going to be the under on this game. I definitely missed on some props, but I'm glad that notes helped you get to your best place. That's the point of the notes. The point of the notes isn't to listen to my conclusion. It's to see the work that lays into it. And then you as a great football fan and very knowledgeable football fan, you make your best decision. The notes just kind of help you see some things that you might want to crystallize. So that's awesome. And then Scott asked, thought on the Hardman TD. So that could have been a 2-point play that was designed for that purpose, but it also just could have been a goal line play, right? So I think that's kind of the same. Sometimes you draw up these goal line plays and you use them at 2-point scenarios. But it was just a great play. The misdirection is really what set that up. But again, if there weren't 4 eligible receivers in that same area, I think that would have not had the same level of working because the person who would have been accountable for coverage to Hardman would have had a different responsibility, but it was ready to pass him off and deal with one of the other 3. And I think that was the beauty of the play. It was very layered, very complicated. And then final wrap on players. Mahomes throws for 333 and he runs for 66, led the Chiefs in rushing yards. Obviously the passing yards were huge. And you heard me say at the top of the show, this is Michael Jordan winning when the win isn't necessarily there, finding out ways to make it work. I thought it was beautiful for the Chiefs that they got contributions from Hardman, 57 yards a touchdown, Watson, 54 yards, MVS, a touchdown. That was huge for them. The 49ers had a plan for much of the game until the later third for Kelsey, and then Kelsey went off. He erupted. They definitely had a good enough answer for Rashee Rice, but it was those 3 receivers, Hardman, Watson, and MVS, 2 touchdowns, 125, 130 yards. That was huge. Rashee Rice, not a big factor. 6 catches for 39 yards. There were a couple times he moved the chains. That one drive at the end of the first half, he helped him get a field goal. Isaiah Pacheco. Certainly Joe Tooney being out hurt, but this is the 3rd playoff game out of 4. He was less than 4 yards per carry. 2.8 against Miami. That sounds about right. And then 3.2 against Baltimore. And it was rough. It was rough. He was fine against Miami, but otherwise yards per carry were not there for Pacheco. It's a hard runner, but I think they do need a 1-2 punch there. And I love what he did, and they won a Super Bowl, and I don't hold a fumble against him at all. He's not a fumbler. So but in the catches, 6 for 33, that was impressive. He did a nice job as a receiver, but Kelsey was the man. That second half was incredible. The fourth quarter was incredible. I mean, the fact he puts up 1 yard at the half and ends up with 93. If you take his first half against Baltimore and his second half against San Francisco, good Lord, you got 190 yards almost there. It was very much incredible. And on the 49ers side, look, I mean, CMC gets 160 combined yards and a touchdown, but he had 22 carries for 80 yards. This is one of the few games he was like literally shut down. He didn't get 4 yards a carry. And going into this game, I didn't even think that was in the realm of possibility because the 49ers, what they're good at, there are teams that have come out in the first quarter and had a plan and slowed them down, but they'll go from outside zone to inside zone, they'll go counter, they'll go trap. They have an answer for almost everything. And again, I don't know if the Chiefs' heavy blitz just blew up everything, but the 49ers, in terms of the run game, had no answers. And that was very, very troubling. I mean, Purdy put up 255 in the air, but I mean, realistically, none of his his three top receivers. Ayuk, 49 yards. Debo, 33 yards on 11 targets. That was horrible. 11 targets, 33 yards. Purdy was often off from the pressure. Trent McDuffie did a nice job at times on Debo. Kittle, don't know how he had just 3 targets, 2 catches for 4 yards, nothing downfield. Now, the pressure that was coming made that a problem. The amount of blitz did make it difficult because they needed him as a blocker. So there's an answer for it. And then you can't really get deep routes when your quarterback has no time. So really it was a cause and effect situation. But the fact that like on the first drive, they didn't try something like that pass to use check was great. But I almost thought in the first drive, they should have tried to have gone with a play action middle shot to Kittle just to try to open something up, but it never materialized. But again, it was really Spagnuolo making them play left-handed. So to close this up, we all know at this point of his career, Mahomes at this point, as of like 6 years in, best quarterback ever at 6 years. Now, Brady, that discussion for the whole career, that comes later. That comes a decade later because maybe Mahomes doesn't continue it. But through 6 years, yeah, this is the best we've seen. He's got the 3 Super Bowl titles, so he's tied to Brady. He blows away Brady in AFC Championship appearances, blows him away in passing yards, touchdown interception ratio, not even close. It's not even close. Now, there's a lot of football to be played. So, again, but through 6 years, Mahomes is the best 6-year quarterback we've ever seen. Now, like I said, that's a long story to tell, but the AFC, you've got to be nervous if you're an AFC team because you want to make the Super Bowl, but you got Mahomes, you got Michael Jordan sitting right there. And knowing that no matter what you do, how do you get your team past Patrick Mahomes? The Ravens, this may have been the Ravens' best shot this year of doing something. Now, maybe they'll still build beyond that. But, man, if you couldn't win this year against the Chiefs, what the heck makes you think you're going to win next year? And so the runners up in the AFC, all of a sudden, now the Bengals defense fell way far off. They're going to get Burrow back next year. Maybe they bring back Higgins to pair with Chase. But if that defense continues to crumble, that's probably, but Burrow maybe could give him a run for his money. I said there's still going to be that. But the fact that Brady, that Mahomes keeps doing this, especially this year. Now, the Chiefs have questions. L'Jarius Sneed, Chris Jones, contracts are going to be running up here and got to afford them. And so if they lose some of this infrastructure, their defense, and they don't bring in more offensive weapons, Kelsey will be another year older. And I think at this point, I think they spotted Kelsey. I think they just got him to the playoffs because the playoff performances were insane. It was vintage Kelsey. So maybe Kelsey's aging super gracefully. Maybe early in the year, he got dinged up early. Maybe they rested him. But man, what we saw in the playoffs, unreal. But at some point, he's going to age, and they're going to have to get more around him than Rashee Rice. But they have time to address that. The draft, maybe. We'll see. Steven points out Shanahan's the most overrated coach. Hard to argue with you, Steven. Very hard to argue with you. 28-3. We'll never forget that. And yeah, and the 2 Super Bowl appearances. He is a genius, but there's a lot of things he doesn't do. Right? Maybe he'd be the best offensive coordinator, and maybe he's best suited that way. Maybe he's best off with somebody else having the organizational lead of being the head coach and making some of the macro decisions. But yes, very overrated right now because if he couldn't make those adjustments against the Chiefs, I mean, the Chiefs, like I said, hey, they were a very good defense, but this was not a defense that was like, oh my goodness, this is like the Ravens, or this is like, one of these all-time great defenses. That was not the case. It was not the case. It was great coaching, but it was very few answers. So there's that. Niners, painful loss. Like you said, Shanahan, very tough to his legacy. the 49ers are in that unique position where they're still paying Purdy nothing. I don't think he makes $1 million. I think it's like 800,000 if I remember. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it's like nothing. Whatever it is, it's like ridiculously low. It's like nothing. And with that money saved, they were able to put together the Avengers. That's basically what they were able to do. They had a roster full of stars. Maybe one more year they can run it back. I don't think they have to pay Purdy next year. I think eventually they're going to have to. I don't think it's next year. So they might be able to bring the band back. But how far does it get you? You know, are you going to get to the same point and get to the Super Bowl and face the Chiefs again? And then good luck. Kittle's pushing 30, but I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's an issue at all. Ayuk's a free agent, but I think they could franchise him if they really want him back. They do need to address the offensive line, I think, a bit. I do think that is a problem. I think you have Trent Williams and the other guys are not very good. I think that would be a point in the draft that I would address. Defensively, I think Steve Wilks needs to go. They're not going to fire him. He needs to go because with all the talent he had to get those results where they were getting blown up by the Lions and the Packers, it was bad. It was bad. Scott points out maybe worried about CMC falling slightly in a couple of years. Yeah. Again, agree 100%. I think at this point we can say McCaffrey does have another great year in him, but you're right. So I think that window on the 49ers is probably another year because Purdy's, like it or not, agree with it or not, Purdy's their quarterback, and they're going to have to pay him. They're going to pay him market money. You can't not pay a quarterback market money. And the fact he got them to an NFC championship game, then the injury, not his fault, and then he gets them to a Super Bowl, whether you blame it on him or not, or it's everybody else, he got him there. And they're going to have to pay him. And once they do, at that point, yeah, McCaffrey's going to be getting closer to 30 and Kittle's going to be in his 30s. And so next year, if they're going to have another shot, it's going to have to be this year. But that's going to be about it. If there's any more comments, I'll be happy to address those. But remember, I want to point out, I'm going to take a hiatus from this. Now, I'll be on XM, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel 87 almost all week. I'll be on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'll be on. So during the weeknights are 8 to 10 Eastern, weekends 1 to 3, and then I'm done on XM until July. Our baseball coverage kick over. Wherever you're watching right now, if you're watching on RotoWire YouTube, remember, I'm going to start these 2 shows a week starting in early March. March 4th, we're going to take off till, and you're going to have to catch these shows on the X. We're not doing our NFL YouTube page until closer to the NFL draft. Remember to give me a follow at Jim Coventry NFL, and any updates there, I will update you to when those shows are, but we love that. I don't see any other comments. Everybody, it was a great season. If you spent 1 minute with me, if you spent 1 hour, if you came in my shows all the time and watched, I appreciate any time you spent with me. Thank you for giving me even an ounce of being part of your football process. My pleasure to be here for you anytime. Good luck in the offseason. We'll be doing shows when free agency hits. So, again, make sure you catch those. We'll be doing plenty of work for the draft. We'll be doing another marathon before the NFL draft. Everybody, thank you. See you in a couple weeks, and I hope all stays well with everyone.